Before illness, his days slipped by like sand in an hourglass. He woke early, rushed through breakfast, and hurried off to work, always with an eye on the clock. The office consumed him, deadlines stacked one after another, and by evening he collapsed at home, too drained to notice the small wonders around him. A quiet walk in the park, the taste of a warm meal, or the sound of laughter at his doorstep, all of it blurred into the background. He believed he was living, but in truth, he was merely moving. Then came the sickness, sudden and unforgiving. At first, it was a weakness he brushed aside, assuming rest would cure it. But days stretched into weeks, and the body he once trusted betrayed him. Muscles grew frail, breath grew short, and the simplest actions became battles. Rising from bed felt like climbing a mountain. Eating brought no joy, only effort. Nights were long and restless, filled with thoughts of whether he would ever recover. The world he once raced through slowed against his will. From the window of his room, he watched neighbors walk, children play, and trees sway in the wind. They seemed to belong to a distant world, a life he no longer knew how to claim. Each passing day pressed on him the weight of helplessness. He mourned the man he used to be, the one who walked without pain, who ate without effort, who breathed without thought. And yet, in the quiet of that room, an awakening began. Illness stripped him of everything he had taken for granted. The body he once ignored demanded his attention, and in its weakness, it whispered truths he had long forgotten. Life was not measured by the number of tasks completed or the hours spent at a desk. It was hidden in the ordinary rhythm of the heart, the soft rise of the chest with each breath, and the steady steps that carried him forward. Still, acceptance did not come easily. Anger and despair visited him often. He despised his reflection, the pale skin, the tired eyes, the thin frame. He feared he might never return to the life he knew. He wondered if this was punishment for years of neglecting his health, for living as though his body were a machine instead of a fragile vessel. These thoughts haunted him, filling his nights with silence that felt heavier than any noise. It was in this darkness, however, that the seeds of change were quietly being planted. His illness had broken him, but it also opened his eyes to something he had overlooked his entire life: the miracle of simply being alive. Recovery did not arrive in a sudden rush of strength. It came quietly, like the first light of dawn that pushes back the night. His legs trembled the first time he stood after weeks of weakness. Every step felt uncertain, as though the ground beneath him might give way. But his elderly neighbor, the retired nurse who often visited, watched with gentle patience. She told him not to measure progress by distance, but by the courage it took to rise each morning and try again. At first, her words felt too simple. How could a few steps matter when he once walked miles without thought? Yet, as days passed, he began to notice small victories. The way sunlight warmed his skin during those short walks to the garden. The faint taste returning to his meals, once bland and joyless. The steady rhythm of his breathing, which no longer felt like a burden. These were moments he had once overlooked, but now they shimmered with meaning. Still, the journey tested him. Frustration shadowed his progress. Some mornings, his body refused to move the way he wished. Other days, he compared himself to the healthy men outside, striding with ease, and he felt a sting of envy. He hated how slow he had become, how fragile, but his neighbor reminded him again and again that healing was not only about the body, it was about learning to embrace patience, to find beauty in the smallest steps. Slowly, her wisdom began to take root. He started to sit by the window, not with sorrow, but with a quiet sense of wonder. The world outside no longer seemed distant. He watched the trees sway and thought of their patience through seasons. He heard children's laughter and felt hope stirring within him. The air he breathed, once unnoticed, now felt like a gift he wanted to hold on to forever. There came a day when he managed to walk to the corner of his street. It was a distance so short that once he would have scoffed at it. Yet, when he returned, his neighbor clapped softly, her eyes shining with pride. He realized in that moment that gratitude was not about achieving great victories, but about honoring the fragile, precious steps along the way. He began keeping a quiet ritual. Each night he whispered thanks for something he had experienced that day: a taste of food, a breath of fresh air, a moment of laughter. These small prayers stitched hope into his heart, reminding him that he was not merely surviving anymore. He was learning to live. The day finally arrived when he could walk freely again, not just to the garden or the corner of his street, but through the quiet paths of the park he once ignored. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of earth and grass, and the sound of leaves rustling above felt like a gentle song. Each step he took was steady, deliberate, and filled with gratitude. He no longer rushed forward as he once did, blind to the world around him. Now, every movement felt like a celebration of life returning to him. His neighbor walked beside him, smiling at his newfound energy. She reminded him softly that health was not only about strength, but about awareness and understanding of how fragile the body is and how miraculous each recovery can be. He carried her words in his heart like a lantern, lighting the path of his new way of living. As he walked, he reflected on the man he used to be, a man who measured life by achievements, money, and the ticking of the clock. A man who swallowed meals without tasting them, who walked streets without noticing the sky above, who breathed without ever feeling thankful for breath itself. That man no longer existed. Illness had stripped him down, but in doing so, it had built him anew, more present, more grateful, more alive. There were moments when fear still whispered, reminding him of how quickly health could vanish. Yet, instead of sinking into despair, he used those thoughts as reminders. Life was fragile, and that fragility made it precious. He realized that the true wealth of life was not stored in a bank account or written in titles, but in the strength of his legs, the beating of his heart, and the air that filled his lungs. One morning, he stood at the edge of the park, watching the sunrise. The golden light spread across the horizon, washing the world in warmth. He closed his eyes, breathed deeply, and felt the fullness of being alive. No riches could compare to this simple, profound moment. He knew then, with unshakable certainty, that health was not just the absence of sickness, it was the foundation of every joy, every dream, every step forward. He turned back toward home, smiling as he walked. The man who once took everything for granted now carried within him a treasure greater than any fortune. The unshakable truth that gratitude for health is the greatest wealth a person can hold. When we pause to think about it, our health is the silent companion that carries us through life. We only notice its absence when it falters, yet every day it sustains us without asking for thanks. Let this story be a reminder that every breath, every step, every heartbeat is a gift worth If it touched you, share it with someone who might need this reminder today. And if you wish to keep receiving stories that warm the spirit, consider liking, commenting, and subscribing for more reflections on life's quiet treasures.